Hey guys, so we're gonna have a little Loom video about persuasive devices. I think my little picture in the corner here is gonna disappear, but I wanted to start off just by saying hi. And if you see me looking in the corner, it's because I'm looking at myself. I know the camera's up here. Um, so let me go ahead and open up persuasive devices. So the first thing that you should have seen that I sent the other day is a little bit about persuasive devices. We've talked about rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion. And these are the primary devices I want you to look at or be looking for right now as you read through speeches, different arguments, and look for those persuasions. Um, the first one was illusion. I know we've talked about illusions, but reference is something that the reader or the listener is expected to know already. Argument, right? We talked about logos, the use of logic, proofs, things that are working through your reasoning mind. That's going to be argument. Analogy, comparing two things, similes, metaphors. A lot of figurative language uses analogy. Rhetorical question, when you ask that question but you don't really expect them to answer, when you say things like, well, do you want to fail this class? Usually the person doesn't say, yes, I do want to fail this class. Or even, no, I don't want to. Usually they don't respond because the answer is already there in your mind. So rhetorical questions do. A call to action. I always use Bob Marley as my example for that. Get up, stand up for your rights, right? It's directly asking you to do something. They usually are command sentences, a call to action. Appeal to emotion, we talked about with being pathos, right? Emotion. So usually language that's meant to fire you up or get you angry or make you scared, right, is all going to be appealing to your emotions. Makes you want to cry, anything like that. Appeal to faith, which is actually usually a logical fallacy because while people use it very often, it's not necessarily the most structurally reasoning way because to create a persuasive argument, but it's definitely used. And basically, it's kind of drawing on ideas and feelings that you share. And then parallel structure is one kind of repetition that we're going to see a lot of. But repetition, parallel words, anything that's working with that. Okay. Um, Now we're going to look at Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech. This is the speech that he gave to the Virginia Convention, which then led to Virginia joining with the Revolutionary War. So give me liberty or give me death. No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery, and in proportion to the magnitude of the subject ought to be the freedom of the debate. It's only in this way that we can hope to arrive at the truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time, through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country and of an act of disloyalty towards the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it's natural to man to indulge in the illusion of hope. We're apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not, the things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I'm willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future but by the past, and judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves in the House. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with those warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array, if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir, she has none. They're meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They're sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose to them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we've been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We've held this subject up in every light of which it's capable, but it's been all in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not been already exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves. Sir, we've done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We've petitioned, we've remonstrated, we've supplicated, we've prostrated ourselves before the throne, and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after these things, may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve and violate these inestimable privileges for which we've been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we've been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to arms to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? Will it be when we're totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength but irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies shall have bound us hand and foot? Sir, we're not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations and will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It's to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we are base enough to desire it, it's now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Okay, so I read that to you guys because what we're going to do is I'm going to show you another Word document where I've gone through and annotated it. Now, the annotations are going to pull out the persuasive devices that we have and plus some extra ones. What I'm going to be asking you to do is I'm going to have you read Ursula K. Le Guin's left-handed commencement speech. Commencement speech is a graduation speech. But you're going to hear that speech. You're going to read through it, and you're going to annotate it the same way you're going to see what I do in Patrick Henry's. Now, you might not have as much, and if you need to write those annotations on a separate document, that is fine. If you want to, I'm going to give you a copy of it. If you want to go through the copy and, make comments or annotate in there, that works just as well for me. You just need to turn in your identification of those persuasive devices inside the speech. Okay, so let's go. There it is. Okay. So, as I went through and annotated some of these different pieces, you can see all my notations here on the side, right? So Patrick Henry begins with a concession. What he wants to do is he wants to concede to the fact that he recognizes the patriotism and the loyalty of the people who just spoken, but he also wants to point out that he disagrees with them. So a lot of times, you can't start off a persuasive speech by saying, what they just said, it's stupid. Because as soon as you say that, you lose half the audience. So concession is a nice way to kind of begin. You acknowledge the things you like about the opponent, but then point out in a nice and respectful way how you're going to say something different. Now, right away, he jumps into a lot of emotionally charged words. Freedom, slavery, all the stuff about being chained. All those things are going to definitely be using emotions and appealing to those emotions. A lot of references to God and our country, the majesty of heaven, which appeals to faith. Now, I would also point out, as I have over here, the inversion of the phrasing. So should I should, as part of that repetition, that parallel structure, even though it's in reverse order. What it does is it kind of is pleasing to the ears and works logically into the way you process the information. Now, when he talks about, this point right here, I just like to mention this, right? That if he doesn't urge them to go to war, right, that he needs to separate God from the king, right? So he needs to create a hierarchy. And the majesty of heaven, of course, goes above the earthly kings, because if you're trying to convince a bunch of people to betray and basically turn traitor to the country they had given their loyalty to, you need to point out that it's not morally wrong, even if it is. So he does that in order to get that across. Apostrophe is when you kind of break apart from the speech to address a particular person. We're going to see here when he says Mr. President, but more so we're going to see as he says, sir, 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 and all of that. I have a little reference to the figurative language, right? The contrast or the analogy, the illusions of hope, right? The kind of idea of the invisibility of it, the illusion that that's not necessarily true, but that language is definitely pretty important there. He talks about shutting our eyes against painful truth, a little figurative language. Not exactly shutting against a painful truth, but once again, it draws a powerful imagery into it. The Song of the Siren, which you probably remember from the Odyssey, your freshman year. Remember the siren, that's a Greek illusion. The sirens would lure sailors to them before they ate them up. We have our first rhetorical question, not going to be our last. We're going to see a lot of rhetorical questions in here. Identify with the question mark. Some nice parallel structure. It's also inverted structure, right? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not? And it's an irregular way to say that. It draws attention by that phrasing. So the having eyes, having ears, right? The see not, hear not. Um, Syntactically or sentence structure wise, it inverts what we would expect to see. And it does that to draw our attention to it and to draw that parallel kind of mirror image a little bit more strongly. And of course, that turns into a rhetorical question. The lamp, there is no lamp of experience on display in Philadelphia or anything like that. Um, the lamp of experience is just an analogy. Remember, and one thing we're going to see here is a motif, a theme of light and light directing us, guiding us along. So lamp, of course, is light. Light is good. Light is guiding us along. So experience is guiding us to what we should realize, right? What he realizes. And what he realizes is that the British ministry have been kind of jerks to the Americans, right? He's basically saying that there's nothing that they have done which makes them seem trustworthy or reliable, calling their smile insidious, of course, just draws into their duplicity, right? Moving into the next paragraph, trust it not, sir. That apostrophe pops back out. Prove a snare to your feet. What's a snare, right? That is an analogy. Saying that the smile that they give us is going to be a trap, right? A snare, like a bear snare, right? That's going to snare us and hold us there. Suffer not yourselves betray with a kiss. Probably a good time for this illusion. If you are familiar with a little known story of a biblical figure named Jesus Christ, he was betrayed by a kiss. Judas gave him the kiss, and then he was given to Pontius Pilate, right? So, once again, in Suffer Not Yourselves, we have that imperative command sentence structure and the idea, the illusion, the religious illusion, right? Kind of drawing onto this very famous betrayal. We have some great, we talked about light being good. Well, if the British and their warlike preparations are covering our waters and darkening our land, we have the darkness in contrast to the light. Lots of rhetorical questions. Another sir. War and subjugation, once again, gets you fired up. Nobody wants to be subjugated. Nobody wants to be enslaved. That's an emotional appeal. You know, One submission is another emotional moment. Lots of rhetorical questions. Why? Getting us riled up. Patrick Henry's doing a good job of that. Right. Once again, the British Parliament, are they really sitting as blacksmiths binding and riveting chains? Of course not, right? This is all just a metaphor. But if we're looking at the laws as things that are binding and riveting chains upon us, right, and enslaving us, emotionally we're getting charged and fired up by that. He goes and he starts answering some of those questions. It changes it no longer to be a rhetorical question, but it's still a very important structure. Um, you know, Shall we try argument? Sir, we've been doing that. What can we offer to it? Nothing. He goes into a new motif over here, the storm, right? There's going to be a storm motif that's going to be closely tied to the to the battle and to the British armies coming along. But we're going to see the storm pick up again towards the end. But I want to point out this wonderful moment of parallel structure. We petitioned, we've remonstrated, we've supplicated, we've prostrated ourselves. Great repetition, parallel structure. We have that form that keeps on going through our mind to kind of build up into build up energy and kind of have a little crescendo. It rises and hits us a little bit harder as they go through that. We have tyrannical hands in the ministry. Once again, another emotional moment. Tyranny, right? Tyrannical. that connotation of the word choice is really important. We have more parallel structure, our petitions, our remonstrances, our supplications, um, all that once again kind of building up emphasis. Um, and then he works into his closing, right? If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve, if we mean not basely, parallel structure, same structure that's repeated, and built up, built up, right? Um, Language is like music, right? It builds into crescendos and then it falls suddenly, and all those things have vibrations within us as we listen to it, and that is what Patrick Henry is doing here. He has this call to action: repeated, sir, we must fight. Um, the sir, right? There's apostrophes, the rhetorical questions. But notice where he goes these rhetorical questions, right? Basically, kind of shaming the listeners, right? Shall we gather strength by Israel resolution and action? Um, shall we acquire the ability to resist them by lying on our backs and hugging a phantom of hope, right? Meanwhile, the enemies are bounding us hand and foot. All those things, right? He's kind of creating this hypothetical that if all we do is hope and just rely on hope, that we are going to be enslaved by the British, right? Once again, emotional response, shaming the audience. Um, God of nature, holy cause. Once again, some calls to faith, putting faith, nationality, and patriotism all together here, right? The just God just goes more into that idea of the faith, right? To the vigilant, the active, the brave. Really interesting parallel structure. It is a synecton. What that means is it doesn't have a conjunction right there because it has that staccato, the vigilant, the active, the brave, which is different than what we would call polysynecton, which is when you would say it is to the vigilant and the active and the brave. Notice that the asynecton, take away the conjunction, makes it very um, pointed. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. Right. Once again, figurative. There are no chains. These are laws that they're talking about. Right. This is the Stamp Act and et cetera, like that. Right. Um, as we kind of move here into the end, right, we go back to that storm motif, the gale that sweeps from the north. Um, Notice exclamation points, a lot of exclamations to kind of draw the emotion into this, right? Our brethren, notice that word choice, right? Brethren, bring them together of the field. The rhetorical questions, asking us why, once again, bring up that kind of shaming, drawn in, especially with the price of chains and slavery. Um, the rhetorical questions drawing shame and emotion, and then forbid Almighty God, a little appeal to faith, and then he closes where give me liberty or give me death, the parallel structure that's so famous and so well known from here. Okay. So hopefully that made sense and worked for you. Um, what you're going to do now is you are going to open up the left-handed commencement addressed by Ursula K. Le Guin. It is a college address that she gave in 1983. Pay attention to the allusions, the use of language, the parallel structure. Like I said, you're not going to find quite as much as I found in Patrick Henry's, but you're going to find some, and I think you're going to like them. It's a good speech, one of the better commencement addresses. Definitely from the 80s, where you have an earlier form of um, feminist kind of viewpoint. It is a women's college originally that they're drawing on there. So, all right. Let me know if you have questions as you work into your assignment. Love you guys, and I'll make more of these. Okay. Thanks.